My next guest, Jennifer Scheinman, is a seasoned registered dietitian nutritionist with over 25 years experience in the field of nutrition and wellness. She holds a master's degree in integrative and functional nutrition and has advanced training from the Institute of Functional Medicine. She's my kind of girl. Jenn's expertise in cellular health and aging makes her a sought-after speaker and media expert. As the senior manager of nutrition affairs at Timeline, she educates healthcare providers and consumers on the role of mitochondrial health and longevity. We are so happy to have her here. She's helping us optimize our health and vitality. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. And I just love that I get to get these amazing conversations that I think are just so transformative around how people can really take their health and their longevity into their own hands.
I couldn't agree more. And the mitochondria is one of my favorite subjects. And I bring up the word a lot on the podcast, but always in relation to something else. And so I'm really excited for the listeners that don't know much about it to understand our mitochondria and why they're important to us. But generally speaking, also, which I'm really excited about is what you said is we're in a place now in our lives, in our world, in our timelines, where self-advocacy is on the top and front of the forefront of certainly my mind. And I think a lot of people's minds today, as we go through the healthcare crises that we have and the insurance crisis and things like this. And so education and information to give people power
Absolutely.
and freedom. You know what I mean? To understand who they are, how they work and operate, and to listen to the choices that their bodies really need them to make for optimizing, life.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I think we're in just this incredible time with, the good or the bad of social media, and like the power of podcasts like this is that people can really take their health into their own hands and can kind of really listen to their own body, take the science that's out there from experts like you, and just really synthesize that and figure out what's the best plan for them. And I think it's just such an exciting time. And I'm so excited you talk about the mitochondria because you make my job so easy. So
well, we're really going to get into it today. And I really like it because we need to partner with our physicians and healthcare providers today. It is no longer like, what do I do? What do I do? Partnering as self-advocates. So I want to really just get right into the mitochondria and why we don't hear about it until we reach a certain sort of age. You don't really talk about mitochondria when you're talking about kids as much, but I know it's important. So I'm just going to give you the floor right now. Explain what our mitochondria are, why they're important to us, and why we need to support them.
So our mitochondria, and I want to keep this, we'll dive into the science, but I want to start a little more high level to meet people on the different places where they're at, because to your point, a lot of people aren't thinking about the mitochondria. And I think that's a huge disservice. And I really believe this, and I say this often, that the mitochondria are the next forefront of health, kind of like the journey that gut health went on. So if you think about 10 to 15 years ago, people were like, what's a probiotic? Like there was these things, this bacteria in my gut, ew, gross. And now, people are talking about gut health. It's, from yogurt to even sodas, gut health is the thing. And the reason is because there was amazing science about gut health. It just took people like you, platforms, to start educating the mainstream, both mainstream media, but also people to really take that into their own health. And now we're in that place with mitochondrial health, where there is so much evidence on the importance of mitochondrial health for longevity that we just can't ignore it anymore. So people may not have heard of it before, but I guarantee it is the buzzword of 2025, and you're going to start hearing about it. So let's chat about what they are. Now, usually the first thing, it's almost like a reflex. When you hear mitochondria, you think powerhouse of the cell, right? That's what you learned in high school biology. They are energy generators. And while that's partially true, it's a little bit of a disservice to the mitochondria because they do so many more things besides just cellular energy. So they do a lot in terms of just cellular communication. They play a role in things like calcium, balance within inside your cell. They play a role in telling your cell, hey, it's time to retire. I hate to use the word but die, but it's basically time to retire and turn this over to a younger cell. So there's just so much that the mitochondria do. But for simplicity, I think when we talk about aging, I think focusing on energy and the powerhouse of the cell is really helpful because I like to think of the mitochondria as like a little tiny factory or a little battery pack inside your cell. And in fact, you don't have just one inside a cell. You will have thousands. And depending on what cell type it is, like your brain or your muscles or your liver, which require tons and tons of energy, you'll have thousands and thousands of mitochondria in there. But like any factory, through wear and tear and overuse, it starts to break down, right? And that means you're going to have less good functioning product at the end, which is energy in this case. You're going to have not as good energy production at the end. And that is really what starts to lead to aging, cellular decline, and a lot of the chronic conditions that we see as we age. There is this link between mitochondrial decline. And it makes perfect sense. If your cell doesn't have the energy it had when it was a younger cell, it's just not going to perform the way that it did as we were younger.
And the other piece to it too is that the new cells aren't lining up to replace the old cell, right? So the factory is slow, the machinery is getting older, right?
Absolutely. So you see this like wear and tear that's kind of climbing up here, and then the recycling process and the process to build new mitochondria and cellular parts and cells in general is decreased. So you get this imbalance where you're just getting a lot more cellular junk and debris. And that's part of the biology of why we age.
And why we talk about it more as we're aging, because the classic sign that is signs saying whatever that you hear all the time that I remember hearing when I was younger and now I'm saying, which is really what got me excited and really interested in mitochondria, was I just don't have the energy like I used to. I just can't. I'm not in my 40s anymore. I'm not in my 30s anymore. I just can't. Well, come on, man, like 60 is the new 50 and 50 is the new 30. And, we are living longer. So how do we support this longer life with robust, healthy energy and vitality? And how do we keep our cells producing? And how do we support that? The answer always is, most of the time, if you're not managing through your diet, right? Food and nutrition. So first you want to start with, what do you eat? What do you do? Tell me about your life, right? That's part of what you do. But then there always comes a time where you have to make a choice. Like, can I supplement my energy levels through food and, diet, and exercise, sleep, obviously? Or do I need supplementation? Do I need help? And that's how I began. And you began the podcast with me about the gut health. And I learned so much about gut health trying to save my little boy who was riddled with antibiotics that were saving his life, riddled with medicines that were literally saving his life. But at the same time, hurting other parts, that we had to support that side of it. And that's how I got involved in it. And then as I started feeling, wow, I just don't have the energy I used to have, I had the Integrative Institute of Nutrition to lean back on. I had people like Dr. Mark Hyman and you to lean on to find out what was going on with me. Yeah. So let's just jump into what's the next step now? Like, okay, so we're feeling de-energized. People who are out there, with all you who are having your energy, I love you. Keep it moving. We're all bio-individual, right? But you that are slamming down 4 or 5 cups of coffee, can't get it. Please, the energy drink's full of sugar, not going to do it for you. Talk to us about what's our choice to keep this support system moving when it comes to our inners.
Yeah. So, so as a registered dietitian, right? Like food, the basics, like what you eat, exercise, sleep, those have to be the foundation. But also after almost 30 years of clinical practice, I know it's a lot easier said than done, right? Like if you don't feel good, getting the energy to go to the gym, getting the energy to try and cook a meal as opposed to go to takeout, like it's a challenge. And so there are targeted supplements that can not at all replace the foundation, but can help to kind of bridge that gap and get you feeling a little bit better so you can take control of your lifestyle. Or if your lifestyle is already pretty rock star, can maybe up level it, right? And that's where I really look at the use of dietary supplements, or even things like red light therapy, cold plunge, like a lot of these things that are kind of becoming trendy. They are in no way, shape, or form like the best thing you can do. Diet, exercise, sleep, stress reduction, like that's the best thing you can do. But if you want to either help get yourself to a point where you can take control of that, or you want to up level, there's a lot of fun things you can play around with.
Yeah, there's no such thing in life, period, end of story. Maybe a lottery ticket, but that won't even do it for you as a silver bullet.
Nope.
It
Yeah.
has to be a rounded story. And sometimes you can't finish the page. And sometimes, the book is going to be left unread, but you eventually get to the end. You've got to understand that we ebb and flow in our life cycles and in our life. So the things that worked for me at one point may not be working for me anymore. And how do I lean into my lifestyle? How do I listen to my body? And how do I know when to supplement, when to have that help me learn a new routine, learn a new rice, and then I can move away from it because I'm doing something else? Like, let's just talk about, because it's something we talk about a lot here, is gut health, for example. Yeah. So for me, apple cider vinegar was an age-old remedy for gut health, but the barrier, because it's fermented food, we just need really healthy bacteria. It's not even probiotic, to be absolutely, clear with everybody. It is healthy bacteria.
Yep.
And that's really what it is. And so I thought, what a natural way to keep, and I did it for my son because I wanted healthy bacteria in his gut, because his gut was being stripped of that healthy bacteria with the antibiotics that were trying to do real good, but there was also a little bad coming on the tail end of it too. So everybody's heard me talk so much about that. And it's really easy to understand that if you could supplement that into your gut health to jumpstart your life, then you can learn about gut health and learn that, wow, I love pickles. So I eat pickles almost with every meal. I have now a robust thank you, gut, and it's in a good balance. And I know, because I can tell when it's not. When my gut doesn't feel right, I have my apple cider vinegar there. I take a shot. I start to think about, what did I eat? Oh yeah, your gut probably should bother you a little bit. So that's what I'm talking about. There's lifestyle times and changes. Energy is what I want to get into next. Now I'm feeling low energy. So right away after nutrition school, I learned that my energy source is my B vitamins. B vitamins are going to turn my food into fuel. Right. So I'm like, now I'm trying to eat my B vitamins when I'm eating food and do them on full, and it's not sustainable for me. And B vitamin isn't enough. It's not enough. I need another. So take them through my history a little bit. You know what I mean? About my problems as an aging female, and how you relate that as a clinician and an expert in this, and how you help people get to the next level.
So let's talk about that B vitamin for an example, and it giving you energy. So it is not the B vitamin itself. It is the fact that the B vitamin is helping the mitochondria to do its job, right? So, so you can supply all the B vitamin that you want, right? But at a certain point, if that factory, so again, let's just picture the factory again, because I'm a very visual learner, and so hopefully the people
You're
who are
a visual
listening are as
teacher.
well. But here's how I like to think of these mitochondria, right? They're these energy factories, right? And they take the food that we eat and the air that we breathe. That's the raw materials. That's the starting point of energy production. And they go through, we won't go into a lot of detail because this is where it gets super nerdy and boring, but it goes through this very complex pathway through the mitochondria where it is taking that energy and converting it into what's called ATP. That's cellular currency, cellular energy, right? And in order to get more energy, there's a couple different things that you can do when you keep this sort of factory visualization, right? You can put more workers or better workers on the factory, right? And B vitamin is one of those, right? So in fact, the entire B complex, so are things like CoQ10, so are things like magnesium, right? These are all called cofactors, and they are part of this complex assembly line. So, and you also can start with better quality raw materials, right? Just your diet in general, whether you're eating tons of processed sugar and processed fats or a whole food diet, right? These are all things that are going to help that factory run better. But there's a couple other things you can do. You can make more factories, right? More factories, you're going to have more energy. But at the end of the day, those factories do get worn down, and you only have so much real estate in your cell or in the real world as well, right? If you're using that visualization, you just can't build new factories on top of other factories. You do at some point need to take out the junk, the damaged factories that are just there, actually causing more damage You need to get rid of them and then make room to build newer ones. And so that is a sort of a very unique process that our body can do, is this kind of cellular recycling of those factories. And then, of course, yes, 1,000% you need to make sure that you're eating high quality food, that you have all those cofactors, which you're going to have if you're eating a well-balanced diet. And then if you recycle those factories, you're going to feel more energetic because you have more youthful factories inside of your cells. And that process it's kind of a medical biological term, but it's called mitophagy. Mitophagy, so mitophagy. People who are, very familiar with the fasting community are familiar with that word autophagy, which is sort of total cellular recycling and rejuvenation. So this is just a very targeted form of that happens on the mitochondria. And I really feel like the secret as we get older and we start to notice our energy waning is that we can help to trigger that recycling process so we have better functioning mitochondria.
Okay, so how do we do it?
Right. So how do we do it? Well, so our body is so cool because it does these things sort of automatically, but then we can turn the volume up on that. And there's a couple of things that you can do, right? Diet, of course, right? Certain, things that you're eating, you're going to make sure that your mitochondria are working the best that they can. Calorie restriction and fasting, particularly, will turn on that mitophagy and help switch that lever. The other thing is exercise, right? So again, going back to the foundationals, you have to do those things. But if we're looking for some external molecules, this is where it gets a little bit tricky. And I know that we sort of talked about like mitochondria is the buzzword right now. And there's a lot of supplements out there that will target mitochondrial health. But in terms of this recycling process, the only molecule that will do that is something called urolithin A. And I know that is a big mouthful. And probably most of the people on your audience have not heard of it yet, which is okay. That's why I'm here. But this really interesting molecule called urolithin A, and it comes in a branded supplement called Mitopure, which is a lot easier to say and remember. It will turn up the volume on that recycling process. And it's very unique in the fact that it's the only dietary supplement that will do that. And that has been clinically proven, I should say. There may be other things out there claiming that they can do this, but in studies done in living human beings, the only external molecule to date that has been able to do this is called urolithin A or Mitopure, and it's really exciting.
And how does it do it? How does it work?
So it works in a pathway sort of similar to the way that exercise will turn on that pathway. So it's triggering a lot of the same sort of molecular signaling and turning on a lot of the same genes that will happen when you're exercising.
So is it with supplementation for me, it's like a kickstart, you see that you're deficient or you're feeling deficient. So you're going to supplement, and then you hopefully, because we talked about the silver bullet, you're going to look at what you're eating. You're going to look at your lifestyle. You're going to look at how much sleep you're getting, your stress you're under, blah, blah, right? We know we have to do all that. So let me ask you this question. With supplementation, with something like Mitopure, let's talk about the factory. So one of your factories is really insulated from wear, from environment. But one of your factories is right on the ocean and it gets a lot of salt, right? So what happens if I'm going over to Aunt Karen's house for a couple weeks and she's a really salty cooker?
Yeah.
Can you supplement Mitopure for not only a boost and to get your factory recycling cleaned out, did like a boost to your spring cleaning or early spring cleaning? Can you supplement with it intermittently? Can you use it to get things moving, feel better? Do you have to use it for a long? Can you explain how it works in the body?
Yeah.
To take it?
Yeah. So I think of this, there are certain supplements that I think are foundational things that most people should be taking regularly.
When you reach a certain age.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So let's just run through those a little bit. Do you mind?
Yeah, even so, I mean, I'm kind of talking even above like the age of 18, right? Things that are just tend to be like deficient in most American diets, right? I think like a good quality multivitamin, an omega-3 fatty acid, magnesium, right? These are things, when I think of dietary supplements as a foundation, these are things that are absent in people's diet on the regular, right?
Yeah.
And urolithin A would be one of those things. Because let's chat a second about just what it is, right? Like, we were diving into the juicy stuff of what it does, but it's like, well, what is this thing? Where am I going to find it in nature? Can I get it through food? Why should I supplement, right? So it is, it circles back to gut health, which I think is so cool. And you were talking about like fermented foods and the power of that. And one of the things that's so cool about fermented foods is that there are also these nutrients called postbiotics inside these fermented foods. So when I think, I'm going to speak in a super simple analogy because this is just how my brain works. But when I think about probiotics, right, there are these bacteria that live inside our gut. And we have a symbiotic relationship with them where they're essentially getting room and board and they pay us in these health promoting molecules. So we don't really digest fiber, right? Certain polyphenols, which are chemicals inside our plant foods, we don't digest them, but our gut microbiome does. And then the molecules that they convert these things into, that's how they pay us for giving them room and board, right? They are giving us these super health promoting molecules, and we are just scratching the surface on what these postbiotics can do. So urolithin A is one of those postbiotics. So theoretically, if we have a healthy gut, and that's a big if we're eating enough of if we have a healthy gut and we're eating enough of these foods that are rich in a very particular type of polyphenol, it's called an alligitanin. We find that in pomegranates, berries, and nuts. It's not in like every food that we eat on a daily basis. So if we're eating enough of those foods and we have the right gut microbiome, we should be making urolithin A ourselves. But the problem is, and we've actually studied populations and across the world, and what we found is really like 30%, 40% of the population even has the right gut microbiome to make this. And it's not even like, am I taking care of my gut? Because there are things like I was a C-section baby and I was bottle fed. And so I am not a very big producer, despite all the probiotics that I eat, all the fermented food, all the fiber. Like my body is just not going to produce a lot of this because of probably what happened in my childhood. So there's that.
I want to explain that to people for a second.
Absolutely.
Because your lineage and your history when you're talking to your doctor really does matter. Your health history, you got to fill out the forms all the time. You're like, why? Because it really matters. So she's predisposed to not create something because she mentioned for two reasons, the urolithin A. Her body is already not, she's already at a disadvantage because of nothing she did, two things, and nothing her mother did. She had to have a C-section. So what that changed was you explain it.
Yeah.
Explain why bottle feeding and that, because I think it's important that new moms who have a child this is information. Yeah. Information is power. It doesn't make you less than or different. It just makes you bio-individual. This is your journey.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we do get inoculated in our early days, both as we go through, if we are through a vaginal birth, right? Some of that, there's bacteria in there, which does go through our nostrils and, it sounds kind of gross, right? But that is how we start to get inoculated with this. Yeah. And, same thing with breast milk and just, when we're, mouth contact to the breast, like these are all ways that as an infant, we're getting inoculated with these bacteria and these probiotics.
Healthy bacteria. Yeah, building your immune system, building your gut microbiome.
And there's no shame if you can't breastfeed or even like the example of your son, like, in early childhood, if you are sick very often and you use a lot of antibiotics, you are also, you're doing some, I hate to use the word damage because that has such a negative connotation, but you are changing and altering the gut microbiome as a young child. And that does have.
So you gotta support it.
So that just
means like anything.
Exactly.
You gotta know it, acknowledge it, and then figure out how do we support it.
1,000%. Exactly. So, and there are things you absolutely can do through probiotics and through polyphenols and fiber and, a healthy gut, all of that you can help to rebalance the gut. But there are certain things that I just think, the science is showing you just will never really recover no matter what you do as an adult. And that's where things like supplementation can kind of come in and help to fill in those gaps.
I love that. So we talked about where we could get urolithin A from, and I want to talk about, so basically it's almost like what makes up a superfood. It has to have certain things, like it has to have fiber, it has to have polyphenols, it probably has to have urolithin A in it, right? So these are superpower foods that are going to give you great benefit, but they're not readily available, like spirulina. Like how many people are sucking down spirulina, except for when you get it in your smoothie maybe once in a while because you heard it's good and it's green and it looks, it doesn't, So we need consistency in this stuff because we know the American diet is not giving that to us. And we know that we are in a, nutrition, healthcare crisis on one level, but we also know that the awareness of our food supply, the awareness is changing. And so with that, the self-advocacy, just how we started. How do I learn how I can support me? And the choices that we do make individually do help us on the greater level. Because hopefully when you start making different choices, you're starting to feel those different choices have your benefit. And then that in essence will change the cycle of where we spend our dollars, how we're, feeding America, et cetera. So the origins are your Urolithin A we talked about, but we know that we're not getting enough of it. We also talked about that. Yeah. So I want to go back to this Mitopure. So you're obviously an advocate of this, but what forms can you take it in? Who's developing the science behind it? Tell us a little bit more about it. And
so much to unpack here because you're right. Like the mitochondria, every day we are learning more and more about how supporting them is going to impact everything from muscle, brain, immune, skin health, to your point, right? Every cell other than your red blood cell, here's a little trivia fact, every cell in your body other than your red blood cells has mitochondria for energy. So if you think about mitochondrial decline is going to show up in different places. It's happening everywhere, but right, you're going to see, like you see skin aging usually as the first sign of like aging in the body. And actually, for women specifically, do you know what the earliest organ that ages in women is?
What?
The ovary.
Oh, yeah.
Yep. So the ovary is actually the first sign of aging as we start to go through perimenopause. And
that was
actually,
me.
Ovarian function.
My ovaries wanted to quit early. They're like, we're done. You're going to go on without us now.
And that's also actually mitochondrial energy to create high quality egg. Like there's a lot of research that's emerging right now about mitochondrial health and fertility, which is really, really interesting.
That's exciting.
Yeah, because one thing, and I'm getting just a little off track for a second, but I think it's important is because, there might be some of your younger audience that's listening and is like, oh, well, I'm 30. Why do I need to think about this? But the environmental damage that is happening through both poor quality diet, not really exercising a lot, and just all of the toxins that are in just our air, everything that we use, that can also be damaging to our mitochondria as well. So, I think that younger generations need to listen up because, or things like long COVID, mold toxicity, like Lyme, all of these things are also damaging mitochondria. So this is not just about a certain age and older. This is something that, and even children who, there's some link potentially to things like autism and mitochondrial decline. So there is just a lot that is starting to unfold around our mitochondria besides just even aging, which is really important. So
very beautifully put in, very important point, because I'm glad that you corrected me. Because it's not that we hadn't heard about it. We're still learning about it. Like that's the beauty of our speedy technology today is that when new things are happening, we're hearing about it faster. But it's been in development for a long time.
For sure.
A really long time. But the technology, sometimes it's almost like the light bulb. It's like, it went on. Like we see it now. And then we start to see the real channels of it and the power of it. So you got to keep listening and listen to. Okay, I'm now getting off track, but we're less and less women are being able to, the fertility is an issue now, right? So autism is an issue now, food allergies, like we can talk about things. It's like, why are these all, well, it has to do with our environments. I'm no brain scientist here, but that one's not hard to figure out. So we have to know these things so that we can then, empower our bodies. We can empower our own cellular currency.
Absolutely.
So talk more about that right there.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So our cellular health, there are so many things that come into play here, right? And I think you made such an excellent point that I just want to repeat is that like with technology that we have today in terms of communicating with people much quicker than like, snail mail and old school newspapers, is that this amazing science that's being conducted in labs is now being translated to the everyday person at a much faster rate, right? So you don't have to wait for your doctor to go to some conference to hear the latest and greatest and then figure out whether he or she wants to implement it into their practice. Now you can see it and hear it yourself and can ask those questions and be an advocate for your health. And in the case of something like Mitopure and Urolithin A, you asked who was doing this research. So this molecule has actually been studied for over 15 years now. So there's a team of scientists actually coming out of Switzerland, and they're actually the founders of the company Mitopure. There's a parent company that is a science-based company, and they've been studying this molecule for 15 years. The reason people are just starting to hear about it now is because there was no dietary supplement until about 2020. So there was nobody putting any sort of marketing dollars behind it or communications behind it and saying like, hey, this research is so incredible. And now there's something you can actually do about it. So that's sort of a bit of the history of what's
Is that the process of like getting it from the pomegranate into a pill form so that we can then, it's a delivery system situation?
Well, it's not just the delivery situation. So it was really starting like the thing that I found so compelling about Timeline and the research around Urolithin A and Mitopure is it's just actually kind of a unique process because usually in the dietary supplement world, there's not a lot of clinical data, right? It's like, oh, in rats, this looks good and it's safe in humans. So let's put it out there and see what happens and let's sell it and make some money and then do some research, right? This company did the exact opposite. They did more like a pharmaceutical would do, where they actually invested millions of dollars in researching this molecule, understanding not only its safety, but how does it work? And what are you going to actually see in human beings, real human beings that are living, not a human cell, right? Human beings. And
who signed up for the test.
Yeah. And so that's really what took a lot of time. And once there was this confidence that, yeah, this molecule is going to be really impactful, well, now let's produce a consumer product and go out to market with it. And I really wish there was a lot more companies that did that. And I'm hoping really that this is changing the face of how dietary supplements are sold and marketed. So
yeah, new business model. Like, it's the way to do it, to be honest, how I've started all my businesses. I didn't, learn on the go. I did all the work in the back end and launched when I felt really confident about it.
Yeah. And so the research that has been shown, and these are published research in high impact medical journals, right? So a lot of times also, and you see this really in like skincare is like notorious from this, like our clinical study, right? And you're like, of my best friend that I gave my product to and told me that they loved it, right? Like that's what people are claiming as a clinical study.
Talk to Michael Dr. Greger about clinical studies.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's going to put them to the test.
Put them to the test. And he's 1,000 times right. And so the thing that I found was so compelling was that these were clinical studies published in really high impact medical journals. So their claims are based on absolute good quality. Fact and studies, not just like my bestie took this and felt great, right? Which is also very important too, right? Like you want to what happens in the real world,
pudding, as they say.
Yeah, what happens in the real world is not always what happens in a clinical trial as well, right? So you want to also know that you're going to feel good when you take something. But that to me as a dietitian was really what spoke out and was so unique and so compelling about this. And I think its sort of broad application is just starting to be uncovered. So the original research that was done on Mitopure was really looking in the muscle space because if you think about it, like obviously like not only fatigue as we talked about, but like muscle just noticing not feeling as strong, if you are someone who works out, you notice that's, you're not as powerful as you once were. If you're someone who doesn't work out, you notice you get sore and fatigued a lot more easily. So muscle decline starts to happen actually, again, for our younger listeners, it starts to happen in your 30s. Things I wish I knew when I was in my 30s is that you start to lose muscle health in your 30s. And so it starts to kind of become a slower decline. And then as you get to your 60s, it becomes much more of a drastic decline.
And this is just so everybody hears too, this is where you start to see weight gain in your life.
Yep.
So that's where they say, you gain a pound a year, like after a certain age. Like, this is part of the problem. The factory is slowing, it's corroding, and the recycling isn't being taken out.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're doing things to, like
Do
strength
it.
training to
Right.
really counterbalance that natural decline and getting enough dietary protein, all those things. So,
And the right strength training and the right amount. Like, it's like all these sciences in each different pocket. I mean, it's better to work out than not work out with a trainer. Who cares? Just get in there, Google it. You could do it all.
yeah.
But if you want to dig deeper into what's really perfect for your body, you can keep on digging.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also, though, you don't need to overcomplicate it too, right? Like it's, I think there's this sweet spot. And I think that all depends on like what, same thing with diet, right? Depends what your goal is, right? If your goal is to just feel good and live a long, healthy life, that's one thing. If your goal is like, I really want to like have defined arms and like a 6-pack ab, like that's a different goal and a different strategy, right? And if your goal is like, I don't care about my health at all, then that's a different strategy, right? Like not one I subscribe to, right? But I think things don't need to be overcomplicated depending on what your goal is. And
yeah, pick your lane.
A whole another conversation for another day. But I think it's just, again, about that individuality and figuring out A, what works for you, and B, what really like resonates with you and what are your goals and your hopes and your, the things that you really need to work on.
Because there's another piece that comes to play too, is to be honest, is not choice, because it's affordability.
Absolutely.
I mean, like, I'm going to go out and buy, a dozen pomegranates, like, $7 a pop, a pomegranate, or, so like, that's also a play is that some of these foods that, I've had we talk about the blue zones, maybe, Dan Buettner might have found these people had a lot of urolithin A in their worlds. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's all this thing about these places that people are living longer. It's because it's not just about a long life. It's about the quality of life.
For sure.
If you want to have a short, food processed, alcohol ridden, drug induced life, go for it. But it's going to be shorter than yours and mine.
Right.
That's the
Or it's going to be as long, but the second half of it is going to be pretty unpleasant, right?
Riddled with illness. Yeah. If you don't take care of your wellness, you're going to be focusing on your illness, taking care of that.
And that's really like my goal. And most of the people that I work with, right, is like, I'm not as much interested in like life extension. Like I don't need to live to like 125 years old, right? But like I would like to know that if I'm living to 80, 90, or 100, that as much of possible of that is doing the things that I love, is having my wits about me, is being able to live independently and not in a nursing home, is being able to travel, to be with my grandkids, to do things that I love to do, to work as long as I want or retire and take advantage of it. Like it's to live an active and full life. Like I don't want to live like healthfully to 70 and then have 30 more years. Like in a nursing home. To me personally,
stamp it on my gravestone, honey. I couldn't agree with you more. Like I didn't need to live to 125, but I lived good to hopefully like 90 something.
Exactly. And that's really, I think when we talk about longevity, we talk about health span, is just how are we making the most of our time and living the most like fruitful life that we can. That's the most meaningful, with free from debilitating disease, right? We're all going to probably have some sort of disease of some sort or another, right? That's just part of the aging process. But how can you still do all the things that you can love to do and not feel confined to an inside environment?
And then back to the beginning and how can you learn about those things that you can use to stack the odds in your favor? Like you mentioned fiber, and we talked about that as one of those things that our body doesn't digest, but yet it gives us back in 10,000 fold what it takes in rent, right? So I want to talk about fiber for just a second, because I want to bring it back to Mitopure. We hear about fiber all the time as important for our, bowel movements, you know what I mean? Cleaning out, having regularity, fiber. We never talk about how important fiber is for the brain. So now let's talk about Urolithin A, which is Mitopure is a highly pure form of it, is what you're saying. And it's gonna help us. But it's going to help more than just our energy. That was a really long way to get to that. I'm so sorry.
Gosh, no. It's so much.
Because my brain fog is real. And I'm thinking about, will it help my brain? Because I do start to think about, because I have dementia in my family and it's probably my biggest fear. Talk about it a little bit more rounded.
So there's one thing I just want to clarify,
Thank you.
and then I'll jump into the brain. So part of the reason why fiber is so great for the brain, right, is again, it's feeding our gut microbiome, but there's not necessarily a direct link between the fiber and the urolithin A. So the urolithin A is made from a very specific type of polyphenol that is in just these few foods. So not to discount that you don't need fiber, you also need these polyphenols, but the fiber itself is not necessarily going to help your gut produce more urolithin A. So I just wanted to
No, it just feeds your
but
gut
it feeds your gut
bacteria. It's your
microbiome.
food.
It's
It's your
food for
gut
your
food.
gut. It's gut food. Absolutely,
And
right?
that feeds your brain.
Absolutely.
And it also helps your bowel movements.
Absolutely. So,
And it also takes your LDL cholesterol out of your body. It's a grabber. It takes bad stuff out and helps you flush it out.
Keeps you full, manages your blood sugar. I mean, it does so many things, protects against colon cancer. I mean, it does so many things, right?
I know urolithin A has more than just helping my energy.
Yes.
I know Mitopure is going to help more than just my energy. And that's what I'm kind of trying to get at.
Totally get it. Totally following you. So, yes, to your point. So first of all, the mitochondria play a huge role in neurodegenerative diseases, right? So as our energy centers in our brain start to decline, we lose brain energy, right? And so there's a really huge link there. Now, will taking urolithin A help that? We don't know yet, is the truth, right? There are no clinical studies again, this is studies in humans yet showing that it's going to help slow down dementia or do anything like that. But there is some pretty compelling preclinical data, so done in mice and done in cell cultures. So it is promising, and I think over the next couple of years, we're going to start to uncover more and more ways that urolithin A might be able to help other aging systems. What we do know is, again, this is through proof in human trials, is we do know that when you take it as a dietary supplement, it's going to improve muscle health. Going to improve immune health. So that's something we actually don't talk about a lot. We think more of our immune system as like a seasonal thing we need to be careful of, right? Right now we're recording this in early January. Everybody I know is sick. So everybody's like vitamin C, zinc, boost my immune system. But the thing is, our immune system declines as we get older. And that is part of why, as we get older, we're more susceptible to catching colds, flu, all of that, and even certain types of cancer. So we do know that urolithin A, when taken as a dietary supplement, is going to improve our immune health and basically almost rewire the immune cells so that they're acting in a more youthful way. So that's really, really exciting and positive.
That is my question earlier. Like once you rewire it, like on a peptide, if you're in insulin resistance and you kind of figure that out and you get out of it, you don't have to stay on the supplement, but you need it again. Like I go back and forth with my supplements. Talk about that a little.
So here's the thing. The way that urolithin A is working in your body is very similar. I mentioned this earlier, is very similar to the way that exercise triggers mitophagy. So we know you have to do exercise on a regular basis to keep getting the benefits, right? Exercising once is great, but exercising regularly is really the sweet spot. And that's what we suspect is with urolithin A. And so that's why we kind of go in full circle again to like certain foundational things that you should take. If you don't take it every day, that's fine, right? But like most days, right, there's like the multivitamins, vitamin D, the things that you're not getting regularly. And I do think of urolithin A or Mitopure as one of those foundational pieces because it's not going to, once you stop taking it, it's going to stop triggering mitophagy, right? And that mitophagy is still declining. So it's helping in the moment, but it doesn't stay in your system forever.
Right on. Either does vitamin D and vitamin B. You got to supplement it if you're not getting it from your food source. And
exactly.
As we age, those tend to be, magnesium is a huge one.
Yeah. And, I do think there's a case potentially, right, where you could cycle the dose, right? So the doses, we haven't really touched on that yet. So the clinical trial showed 500 milligrams is a great starting place, which would be 2 soft gels a day if you take the soft gels. But you can go up to 1,000 milligrams, and we start to see more robust improvements at 1,000 milligrams. And in fact, the immune data that I was just talking about was with 1,000 milligrams a day. So, we haven't studied this. This is just really like thought process. So there's no like absolute claim I'm making here, but that, you could potentially take it for 500 milligrams on a daily basis. But then when you're going through a stressful time or is seasonal flu, maybe you do turn it up. Or if you're struggling with fatigue, then you do that higher dose. But or you just stick with a higher dose all the
And
time.
feel the different, like know the different. That's what I love about my supplements. Like sometimes my body reminds me I haven't taken them.
Exactly. You can feel it. You will feel it. So, and I think that's a great way to kind of play around with it as well. So, and one thing I just want to say also about, since we're just talking about how you feel when you take Mitopure, it is in today's, I call it like today's Amazon Prime world, where you expect something to show up on your doorstep the next day. This is not the way that you're going to feel. You are not going to take it and notice a big improvement the next day. It takes cellular change, just like when you change your diet and just like when you change your exercise. It takes time to have those benefits accumulate in the body. And that's the same thing with Mitopure. So, our clinical trials showed it took at least a month to see that mitochondria actually turn over and then to start feel those benefits in terms of improved muscle. It's going to be 2 to 4 months. So it's something you kind of got to stick with for a little bit of time, unfortunately. Yeah. But I like setting that expectation, because if somebody goes and takes it and just buys like 1 month and they're like, I don't notice anything after a month, to me, that's not concerning. That doesn't mean that it's not working. It just means it's taking some time.
Well, it's called turning over a new leaf.
Yeah.
That takes a time. That takes months. When
Absolutely.
the leaves fall off for the tree to reproduce, that has to go through an incubation period, sleep period. Your body needs time.
Absolutely.
And I think we are used to instant gratification. We're used to, or we certainly have been sold the dream. And I hope that we're starting to be smarter as humans in the silver bullet.
Yeah.
There is no quick fix, one thing, certainly not for longevity.
Yeah.
And I think the other important thing is that we've really touched on here today is self-advocacy, and that there is information out there.
For sure.
Be curious about it. I want to say three things here. First and foremost is, how do people find Mitopure, and how do they, how do they know it's right for them? I mean, clearly, like low in energy, getting older, we know your factory's probably in a little bit of trouble.
Yeah.
Just give us a little bit of that. And then also, how can they find you? Is there ways that, you can support or timeline, as a company can support people who are curious and want to learn more about how they can live a life just like you want to live. Maybe not 125, but a real good 90.
But a really good number. Yeah. So Mitopure is available on timeline.com. We also have social media, Timeline Longevity, and that is where not only can you purchase Timeline, but we are very transparent about all of our clinical data. So if you are someone who actually wants to read the original research and nerd out on that, it's all up for you to see on our website. So you can go and find that. You can show it to your doctor. You can show it to whoever you want. The other thing is we've got an incredible newsletter that just goes through just all longevity and healthy aging. It's not just all mitochondria, right? So it's a great resource, I think, for anybody who's just, even if you're not ready to buy Mitopure, but you're just kind of curious about what are the I don't want to say the trends in longevity, because there's trends and then there's science, right? And we're really focused on what is the true science. So it's a fantastic resource. And then our social media channels all post a lot of stuff. And then me individually, I am at Jenn Scheinman Nutrition on Instagram, where I gear a little bit more towards women specifically and perimenopause and beyond and healthy aging. So yeah, tons of great resources out there for anyone who wants to learn more.
Well, two things now I want to say. One about Timeline, because I love the idea of the company. I love what they stand for. I really feel like a company like Timeline makes you feel that they really care about you and not just the money. And there's a lot of other companies that, because they're putting in the detail, they're putting in the work. So I just want to take a second, because our dollars do count when we make a choice. And so I want to advocate for a company like Timeline. So can you just talk a little bit about your company and what you guys stand for, and why, consumers should come to you for information, not just Mitopure, but a source of information? And maybe right now we're talking about mitochondria, and we're talking about energy, and we're talking about Urolithin A, but what else is on the horizon maybe for Timeline, where people want to get involved because they want to keep watching what they're doing? So that's the first question. The second question is about you, but you go with Timeline.
We'll do the Timeline first. So, I'll be completely transparent. Like part of the reason I joined, at this point in my life, I've been a dietitian for almost 30 years. I am 49. I have a lot of opportunities like that I can do. I wanted to work for Timeline because they are so different than a lot of the other things that you're seeing in the nutrition world. And as I talked about it earlier, 15 years of dedicated research first, before they even wanted to sell a product. And it's really unique. And so we're a science first company. The company was actually founded out of Switzerland. It's out of a campus called the EPFL, which is basically like the Swiss Institute of Technology. It's like the Stanford or MIT of Switzerland. So top leading scientists studying biology, studying, and doctors as well. And and so we're really proud of the science and we're really transparent about the quality of what's inside our supplement. Third party, and this is for anyone who takes any sort of dietary supplement, forget just Mitopure, right? Look for things that are very transparent about their third party testing, I should say, demonstrating that what's in there, like on the label, is actually in there. There's no heavy metals. There's no like other additives. Like there is truth in labeling there. That's something we're really proud of. We have an entire team that's just dedicated to the quality of how our supplements are produced. And we're just really on the cutting edge of really all things longevity. We didn't talk at all, really, unfortunately. And so maybe we'll do another one at some point, but
let's do it.
Our skin line, we use the power of Mitopure topically to energize the cells in the skin. And what you start seeing is this, beautiful, glowy, hydrated skin that also has this really nice reduction in fine lines and wrinkles. And it works sort of that same mitochondrial turnover. So skin is another area that we're really actively
and you'll find it when you go to Timeline. We mentioned it in terms of a peptide that it's going to do the same, like you got to be looking for all of this technology. The skin's the largest organ.
Yep.
It's just the outside one.
Say that, I spoke about like it takes a while for the dietary supplement to start sort of getting to a place where you feel it working. The skin actually happens a lot more quickly. So if you're like, I just want to test this molecule out, but I don't want to take something for 4 months until I know more about it, the skin's a great place to start because in just 2 weeks, people notice fine lines and wrinkles were reduced. And
I'm taking it all, girl. I'm taking it all.
They're beautiful products.
I'm going for it.
Love the products. The skin products are amazing. So, I think, again, this is all like you can ask any company you are buying something from to show you their third-party testing and the quality seals. And if they are, or the research they're claiming, and if they are very shady about it, don't spend your money there. And if they are very proudly saying, this is the research that supports our claims, this is our, who we have third-party qualifications from and cleanliness standards from, then that's something that you can trust. And, something that I'm very grateful that we take very seriously here.
That's fantastic. Now, I just wanted to move on to you a little bit and I would love to have you back, quite frankly, because, it's difficult when you're teaching something new or, like giving information. Our bodies are very amazing and all the pieces of the factories. So I just wanted to talk about the mitochondria today. And I wanted to talk really about our cells. Yeah. So the mitochondria is just one, but a very important one of many thousands and trillions, many stars in the sky of the cells in our body, and that they die and re-energize and understanding the processes of how we run, and not just waiting for somebody else to tell you is the new way. And people like you are here. So I just wanted to touch on you a little bit again, for the listeners, that you do specialize in menopause, that you do specialize in women's health. And so for people who are, gosh, you guys, there really are options out there. And if you are feeling not yourself and you just can't just figure out why you feel out of body, or you can't keep a thought, or you have to do something about it, because we suffer in silence all the time as women. I just had a girlfriend she's my best friend since I don't remember when, little. I've known her my entire life. We've gone through, our lives together, even though you ebb and flow. Like I didn't see her for a few years when she was having kids and I was having kids. She just went on hormone replacement. We're the same age. I've been on it. It has changed her life. And she learned about it on TikTok.
Good though.
She's like, because she felt so bad. And it was like this information went to her and she was like, and then it brought her down this rabbit hole. And then she called me and she's like, are you talking about your hormone? And I was like, yeah, girl. So we need to talk about it because it's not right for not everybody needs it. Some people like, yeah, menopause was a breeze for me. I never had a problem. But still, like, let's stack the odds in our favor for longevity, for pro-aging, for those things. So I want you to be a resource for the listeners. Because we do have options. And I know healthcare is a pain in the ass and insurance is a pain in the ass. And, it's so difficult. But just keep putting your feelers out there. Try, Jen, try new things. And you are going to, the answers are there. The opportunities are there to seize. And you just got to do a little work.
Knowledge is power. And at least once you have the knowledge, then you can start asking your healthcare practitioner. If they don't have the answers or you don't like the answers, right, then long gone are the days where we feel like we have to be stuck with the same provider. I mean, again, we're tied with insurance and all of that, but there's lots of doctors that'll take the same insurance, right?
Yeah.
And so,
That's right.
And I think one of the things, at least in the menopause space, is like we are now recognizing that there's this huge lack in doctor education, and that, I know I'm changing my gynecologist at this point because I'm like, I don't want someone who's delivering babies. Like, that's not important to me and where I'm at in my life right now. I want someone who's working with women who are in my stage of life and seeing constantly the types of things that are frustrating me or new symptoms that I'm having. So they're in tune to it, right? And so I think
we don't keep our pediatrician past 16, 17, 18 years old. Why do you think you should keep the same? I agree with that. And also, like a doctor who's delivering babies, like, that's really specialized. I want you to be really good at that, right?
Correct.
So why am I going to take you through, where my estrogen levels and my testosterone levels are later? Because now I'm asking you to be more than that. We cannot expect all the answers from one doctor. And if they don't have it, there's some gynecologists don't even believe or don't even do hormone replacement therapy in their offices. So there are options, and, go out there and look, and it's okay to move on. It's okay to find someone new. It's okay to do that. Your body, your health, your longevity, your quality of all that, it takes work from you. Anything good does.
But it's the best investment you can do.
The best investment in the world.
You can do.
What better to invest in? I just put an Instagram post up, and my kids were making fun of me because I was flexing. And, I was actually just saying we're powerful, And the idea of that is I feel better than I ever have. People like, Heather, you're reverse aging. And then someone else commented, yeah, it's the filters. Yeah, maybe it's the filters, but it's also the fact that I feel better than I ever have because I'm spending more time focusing on me.
Yeah.
And how I feel. And I have to now because I can't power through like I did 27, 34, 36, 7, whatever. I just can't. And I don't want to. I'm smarter now.
Well, that's the key. I think that's the beauty, is that we become much wiser as we get older and are more in tune with our own bodies, and our cares and our priorities are different as well.
Use it for us, use it for yourself, because when I look at my children's life and I look at, my friends' children's life, like, we live lifetimes within our own lifetime. Yeah. And it can never be the same. You're going to have to ebb and flow within your own lifetime. And the beauty, I always say, what a blessing it is to be 54, that I get to be alive.
Absolutely.
Life didn't beat me yet. I'm still living it. I still am here.
It's, whatever.
I love the wisdom that I have in life experience, and now how I apply that to my living.
Absolutely.
And then that makes it how I show up in the world for everybody else. And that's the best part of focusing on yourself.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said
So we need you energized for this world. So
we still need to take care of our mitochondria.
Yes, we need to take care of our mitochondria. So please check out Timeline, check out Mitopure, keep self-advocating. We have amazing nutritionists and advocates here, like our girl, Miss Scheinman, to help us. So make sure that you look her up too. This is Heather. It's Health Harmony and Heather, and we'll be back again with another episode real soon. Thanks so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.